That is a fine-looking headshot you have there, sir.
Can you hear me all right?
Dude, you've got a whole professional studio. What am I up against here?
No, this is
Son of a gun, you. This is all being
no.
recorded too, isn't it?
Yes. I am going to mute it for a moment. And okay. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us, and a really big thank you to our special guest today, Andrew Sullivan. He comes to us with or from Osceola County, where he is the UAS manager for their fire services. He's got an interesting experience and background with this technology that I think will be insightful to a lot of you who are looking at getting into this or building a career on the perhaps civil or commercial side, or maybe even adapting if you're in the military side, looking at civic government at the state, county, local level. I think Andrew has a perfect case of the great things that you can do with this technology and the influence that UAS the positive influence they can have on how government utilizes the technology. So with that, I'd like to kind of just ask Andrew to maybe walk us through, who are you, what do you do, and how did you get into UAS?
Yeah, okay. So can I steal the screen from you?
Please. Let me see if I have to make you a presenter.
Not until you enable it. We'll get there.
Oh, shoot. Here we go. Let's see.
And guys, I'm very, very much going to try to avoid death by PowerPoint, but I have a PowerPoint.
I believe you have control.
Okay. Are we there yet? Did we get it?
Yeah. Osceola County UAS Program Update.
Okay. So my name is Andrew Sullivan. I work for two departments within Osceola County government. So my position currently is split, and my paycheck is split between two entities, the Osceola County Office of Emergency Management and Osceola County Fire Rescue and EMS. Prior to that, move about 2 years ago, for the 5 years before that, I was an employee of Osceola County government under the Board of County Commissioners. I had a job that on paper was probably the most boring job any of you could ever hope to understand or comprehend. I was responsible for the county's response to public records requests, which gave me a lot of free time, to be honest. It's a lot of shuffling papers and interacting with lawyers and attorneys and news folk. Prior to that, I actually came to the county from a career in journalism, and I was a photographer for a newspaper. So I'm sort of like a communications media guy. I want to claim, since this is the very first of the meetings, that I invented the term droney. So I don't know if that wins any bonus points, but I figure that if you're going to use the technology and you're trying to influence people to accept the technology, that you should put it out there and create a good positive image of it being used. So basically, how it went down is in 2014, when I first got hired, I had an interest in drones and drone technology purely from the interest of, I want to get an image capture from a place where nobody else can capture images easily. It was very much the domain of aerial photography from manned aircraft. And if you remember the heady times of 2014, if you went on Flickr, there were like user groups of people putting their cameras onto kites and flying them. So about that same time, DJI started releasing Phantom, I think Phantom 2 or Phantom 3, one of those very first ones that finally had a camera attached to it. Fast forward a few years, I'm here in basically a communications office, the public information office, and I have this terribly boring job description. but under the guise of other duties as assigned, I took my skill set with photography and videography and really helped um, Osceola County begin to produce a little better material. So in the photo here on the right is the video production person for Osceola County, and she had an enormous kind of Canon ground-based camera, and she would roll around and do the interviews with people. And the drone footage, after I finally convinced them to purchase this Inspire 1 unit, was sort of like the seasoning that would go on and kind of spice up the footage. So, we would do coverage of new park openings or road improvement projects or very very bland things like that, and have some nice pretty images to look at. So, got good memories looking back at that thing. It is actually still in service. I to date, and I'm knocking on wood here, no crashes, no flyaways, so good, impeccable safety record. Now I jinxed it, but there's that. And so that's where we were, and here's kind of where I'm at right now. This is the setup now. Couple of the Mavic 2 Enterprise units, which are due to be replaced with advanced. The Matrice 210, which is at some point due to be replaced with the M300, I hope. And everything else to kill a set of wall outlets with chargers that you could ever want. And in building out my kit, I really wanted something turnkey. Starting out with the Inspire, the key was I wanted good image quality. I didn't want to, at the time you could buy a drone and you kind of customize it yourself, but I had no interest in soldering or any of that. I wanted something that was going to be sort of universal and plug and play, and I could get more parts if I needed parts. So I know that we're going to talk about restrictions on drone manufacturers here in a moment, but that's kind of what guided me from the get-go, and still kind of is there now as I'm kind of looking into new technologies. I know Autel is pretty heavily recruiting in my field. They've got actually some interesting VTOL unit that's coming on the market that I want to talk about. But here is kind of the selling points for me with some of the kit. And so the Mavic 2 obviously is very quick to set up and deploy and fly around. Decent flight time, you get 20 minutes or 25 minutes per battery, and you can just swap the battery out and fly it again. So all of that is great. The accessories were a pretty good selling point for a public safety standpoint, though I haven't used them nearly to effect as I think the folks in Daytona Beach were on the loudspeaker yelling at people at the beginning of COVID to socially distance. We haven't quite gone that far, but it's nice to have something that you could reach out to somebody if you were doing a missing person search or something. You could call out to them or give instructions to somebody in a precarious place and call them out. The Matrice is so far a potential. It's not really been used significantly for what it's capable of, though it just gives me the Z30 camera gives me a much better optical zoom, so you can get better quality without having to be really really close to a subject. So with fire rescue in particular, you don't necessarily want to be right on top of something that's on fire. It's very bad. You might have a thermal incident with your batteries. So it's nice to get a little closer without physically having to get a little closer. What I would like to do is have more of the capability of bringing instrumentation along with me. So send this unit downfield to go check out if there's a release of a radiation or some more other kind of airborne chemical, and protect my fire guys, make them safe. And here's kind of back to where it started. This is really where drone use in Osceola County, the merits of it were really seen for the first time in a sort of tactical application. So as I said before, it was very much pretty pictures and film. And this is the way the damage assessment was done before I came to the picture. This is after Hurricane Irma. I don't remember if it was 2016 or 2017. I think it was 2017. And the protocol was the director of emergency management would physically leave the command center and get into the Osceola County Sheriff's Office STAR unit, fly around in a helicopter with, I don't know if it's a cell phone or just a point and shoot camera, and just take pictures out of the cockpit of the helicopter. And so this is sort of results you get back. This is the same incident, and this is what's recorded at the time with the Inspire 2, or Inspire 1, I'm sorry, and infinitely better quality. Let's see if I can get this to play. Did we do it? There's me a few pounds ago. So this is also after Irma. This is a separate neighborhood than the one before. And I won't go through all of this. So this is flood assessment. This is not a technical assessment, so it's not going property by property. I did assist the local property appraiser's office because they need to have proof of intrusion. They need to set high water marks and all that fun stuff, property by property, to try to assess value. But this is an area in Osceola County that was not previously known to flood. So many people in our public works, many people in our emergency planning, they had never seen this area have this significant water impact. And just entering on the left side of this, right now in the center, is my house. So it's an interesting experience to come home and see the sheriff's office rescuing people off of your street using an airboat. But the invaluable information that just this video clip was able to give folks actually this year led to almost $5.5 million for a state grant for stormwater improvements. So if you think about return on an investment for a $3,000 drone at the time, it's well paid for itself hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times over, even just from having the data that's here to present to the people that make the decisions to back this sort of stuff. And I know everybody on here is a very polite Zoom user, but I gotta reiterate, I roll with the punches. If you've got questions as I go, feel free to let them rip.
So Andrew, I'll get started. In this case, I'm assuming you went with what you had, as far as you had a Inspire 1. Now that you have a more built out inventory, how is it you go about selecting what platform to bring with you? Do you bring multiple platforms, and then when you get on site, make a determination of this platform is going to be more appropriate? How do you kind of plan those operations out? Do you have any just no plans? You get called and it's like on the spot you have to do an evaluation.
So the Mavic is my go kit. It goes home with me every single night. It's in my vehicle all the time. It is pretty much ready to go in most instances. If it's a sustained incident or something where I need to either travel farther or be up in the air longer, then obviously the Matrice makes more sense. What I think is going to be the pivotal piece to the whole thing is having some sort of solution for the challenge of either having enough batteries or having a rapid enough way to recharge everything. So as I'm planning out what I need to do, I'm thinking first, what is going to be the solution that keeps me in the air for the amount of time that I think I'll need to be in the air? I think the image quality, the data that it's going to give me back, I think is sort of equal at this point. Like I said, there's some solutions that the larger platform, the Matrice, solves as far as being able to get up close to something. If you had a very challenging environment, like lots of wires or structure or whatever, then I think I would go default with the Matrice. And other than that, almost my daily driver is the Mavic, and that's fine for probably 90% of what I do. So here's kind of going right into that. That whole the reasoning behind that is I need to be able to get to a place and deploy and get somebody information. So, um, having to put together a lot of pieces, with the matrice, the solution that I have to bring it around with me involves having the large case, and then each camera module has its own case, and then there's the batteries are enormous, and it's a lot of bulk to be dealing with on a scene where it can be kind of chaotic. If it was like if you were doing like a power line inspection, it would be a little different. You could sort of have things laid out in advance and you can just go from location to location. But, sort of the nature of my work sometimes is you just get a call and you have to go drop everything or, go grab stuff from the station before you head out. And sometimes it's kind of a mess. One of the draws for both of these items is actually the inclusion of the thermal imaging. It can be really helpful to show folks, even after you can't see a flame, that there's still heat. Rekindling is a very serious threat here, especially during wildfire season, which they're in right now. You think you have everything out because you can't see fire anymore, but it's still hot enough to reignite. So by having this information to share with the folks in command at a scene, you can show them exactly where they need to put more water, put more personnel. Let's see, somewhere I think this is the one. And never mind all the marketing. Here we go. And so this is a very, visibility is really challenged here, the way the wind is coming through this building. And so by having the UAS up and able to put on the thermal, you can really see in. So let me just get apart. There we go.
So are you working directly with the incident commander? Who's your point of contact? Like who's feeding you? Hey, we need information regarding, are there any people in there? What are your thermal scans picking up?
Yeah,
how does that chain of comms work?
IC and I, in this instance right here, are joined at the hip. So they are asking me for a particular angle or view, and they want to look and see what's going on. Especially here, they couldn't really exactly see what's going on inside the building. And, obviously a higher resolution thermal camera would have made a little bit of a difference, but nice to have some clue as to what's going on in there, because it's, you're sending folks in to attack, and maybe they have a little, what they call a thermal image camera or TIC. They can go in with that, but by the time you're there and you're face to face with whatever the situation is, you already are potentially in danger. So it's good to have an idea before. Here they sent in, some commercial grade construction equipment to go pull down some of these rolling doors. But it's good to know, is there something right on the other side of that, or is it across the room, or what's going on? And of course, one of the problems, or I guess solutions I've been looking for, I don't know if it's necessarily a problem, but one of the solutions I've been looking for is a way to share this with more than just one person looking at my controller. So we've actually developed a few workarounds for sharing the video feed directly from the drone using Teams. We can
help with that.
I got it figured out. Well, explain it, Professor.
Okay, well, so in our world, we have a concept called remote split operations,
Okay.
which actually takes the pilot, puts them in a totally different location. So in this instance, let's say this actually might help you out. On the responder units, you could have them have a UAS that's rapid deployable while you're still at the firehouse or at another on-site at another location. You can connect in and you can fly the system with them acting as visual observer, but you can work to essentially apply your unique skill set and knowledge to the fire response environment. You can also, because what makes that remote control possible, you can also widely share that visual data. So
Okay.
it's the same concept. We utilize a tool set now with some partners that are enabling us to do remote flight training, where we can essentially get our students time on bigger, more capable advanced systems. And now that we've proven it out about a month and a half ago, we flew UAS in Germany. We flew them here domestically in Pacific Northwest, Daytona Beach, and then Texas. And we confirmed, the latency is manageable. Everything works as expected. It allows us to now work with our folks that are abroad and help them still get the critical knowledge, skills, and ability that are associated with the operation of real UAS. Because up to this point, we were limited to simulation. Otherwise, it's the student on their own until we bring them together in field in a group exercise. But that requires the entire cohort to travel together to the same location. Now we can start to move away from that and be a little more flexible. And it hopefully will lead to students getting on more capable advanced platforms. Because if the more people we can connect in, we can amortize that, we can get investment in more capable systems, possibly even. We have a series of Penguin Bs out at our Daytona campus, fixed wing, but larger capable systems. Hopefully we'll start getting to the point where our worldwide students can connect in and fly those. They can build operational time on those platforms.
Very cool.
Doesn't help all the folks on here. I know we have some folks in the MQ-9 Reaper RPA, remotely piloted aircraft population. We're in the manned flight world here, but it is for the folks that are coming into UAS or aviation for the first time, that capability is useful. If you'd like, I'm more than happy to kind of connect you up with our folks that are doing that and just see if they have anything they can share, and vice versa. Maybe you've got, not maybe, you definitely have operational insight that they would love to hear.
So and my process on working through this is always from an emergency management point of view. Like, blue skies, everything is going to work. Blue sky, I can bring my laptop with me and I can get a Wi-Fi signal, or my cell phone is going to work and I can use that as like a remote connection. Blue sky, everything just works and it's amazing. But right after an incident, if you have a Cat 2 or a Cat 3 roll through town, your cell phone tower is your data network. It's not going to be there. So some of these are nice toys to have the way that they're set up right now. Some of them are sort of pie in the sky, just very, very nice things. But I think, especially here in this slide, we talk about autonomous mapping. I use a service called Drone Deploy, and basically what I do is I pre-program out a flight route, and the drone will fly the route at the height you tell it to, and it'll take a photo every second or so, and then it'll take all this whole array of photos, and the software service you ship them off to, they'll generate a really high definition map. And so that's a great tool to have. You can find out elevation data. You can
we use that platform as well.
Yeah, it's great if you have access to data. So there's some others. I don't know if you Pix4D. I don't know if that's probably on your radar. I've given it a try, and I didn't like the results that I got, but you can make it on your computer, and you don't need to send it anything through the internet. So, that's all a consideration, is trying to make the process of delivering stuff like this kind of bulletproof. And it is useful. I know I just did a survey. Some folks from a university in Chicago were asking about drones and using drones for like, how can you use them to measure the effects of debris that's left behind after a hurricane or something like that. And so, well, using the mapping software, you can set the points around the perimeter of a debris pile, and you can get a volume measurement. Like, that's the sort of thing that you could figure out pretty easily without having to actually go there in person and take up somebody's time. They have to go out in the field.
So I'm going to encourage, UNSY 603 students, pipe up, ask questions. We have, a unique opportunity here. And I think, this week we've all been looking at operational environments. And I think that's something that Andrew is very well informed on, whether it's the emergency environment or whether it's remote areas that are difficult to traverse due to swamp or water intrusion. But yeah, I would encourage you to ask questions.
Hey, Andrew, Steve here. Thank you for your presentation and your information. May the fourth be with you, of course. I have to say that. I'm using. We've got a research project within this course, and I'm looking at and I like the DJI platform. That seems like that's pretty kick-ass, and it seems to have a lot of capability. But I'm looking at more from a police standpoint for protest monitoring and maybe controlling. And what I'm finding out is that there needs to be heavily involved community relations, right? You don't hear too much about defund fire departments these days, right?
That's true.
So I'm just wondering, from your standpoint, did you have some kind of community engagement that, if as people saw these things going around, or maybe they were so localized to the fire that no one really paid much attention. I was just curious if you had a community involvement or engagement.
So, as a firefighter, today is also International Firefighters Day. So I'll take that in addition to May the 4th.
Nice.
I first had to actually overcome just sort of the stigma of drones with my elected officials. So before I could even start to message the public, which is ongoing and forever, you need to make sure that all the stakeholders and the people that fund your operations are in. The public can sway it to a degree. So here's how I did it. I purchased exactly the drone that I wanted to have at work for myself, and I flew it doing exactly the things that I wanted to do at the time. So I made pretty pieces of video with some nice kind of jazzy soundtracks, and I would post them to my social media and invite my elected officials to watch them and say things like, this is the sort of thing that I could be doing for you currently if you would support this program. So it took a few months. Public engagement, when you're on site, there's a few ways you can treat people as they're, I don't know if they're as innately curious as they used to be a few years ago about people piloting drones, but it used to be if you had a drone and you were looking intently at your controller, inevitably somebody would come up and ask you all the questions. How much does it cost? How far away can you fly it? How big is the camera sensor? Be engaging with those people, even on the spot. Like, don't be distracted from the mission or what you're there to accomplish, especially you Reaper guys. I know you got stuff to do, but you never stop representing your program.
Right.
You're always need to be positive, and you always need, and in Florida, and notice this in my first slide, I don't represent any law enforcement entities. Florida's at the state level has made it pretty clear that they don't really want law enforcement to use this technology, and they were very specific in identifying specifically photos and video imagery from drones in legislation that presents law enforcement from using this without some pretty specific criteria being met.
I did notice your county. I have one more question.
Of course.
It appears you're close to Disney World, and not if you've used your
Home
drones
of
or
the
not.
never-ending TFR. Yes.
I'm not sure if you've used your drones to confirm or not whether it's a small world after all.
It is a small world, but the music loop seems like it continues forever. I've been requested by the mouse. Disney actually has a fairly sizable emergency management operation. They have a facility on site with video feeds from every theme park facility, every vacation property, and every cruise ship. They monitor all of that stuff constantly. They had a brush fire on one of their properties, and they weren't able to get over to see it, but we had personnel respond to it and put it out, and they needed to figure out how big was this brush fire and where was it and what was the location, and if they could glean any information off of that. And so I came out and I flew and gave them a nice little video clip and flew a map mission for them to show them you could see exactly where it originated and how it spread and all of that. So I've been, I think, fortunate enough to be a good partner with them. I know the gentleman that maintains their TFR. Through COVID, they were actually one of their properties, an outlying property, was used for COVID testing, and it's still there now. And I coordinated with them to be able to do overflight and mapping for that site so that we could plan and do traffic management and sort of site management. So the mouse is the real deal. Like they're into it. I think they did, Brent, did they do like a multi-hundred drone light show or something? I don't know if that's still going on or not. I'm not a mouse fan.
Yeah, they've had a few experimental technology developments, and I can say at some point we've talked to some of their folks in the engineering side of things. The whole thing with the TFR and the NOTAM out there, it's kind of interesting because it's not the entire property, but it's a good part of Reedy Creek. I think I'm actually looking at before you fly because I wanted to confirm where it was. It's primarily over the golf courses, the Magic Kingdom, and just over the edge of Epcot. So it's kind of the mainstay, but a few things are just outside of it. So it's really interesting kind of to see that what it looks like down here from the before you fly perspective.
It's like that M. Night Shyamalan film where you think you're in the 1800s the whole movie, and then you just realize that you just couldn't fly the planes over for years.
Yep.
So that's interesting. So here's sort of the other thing that I've been doing lately is for emergency management has been all COVID all the time. And exactly as I described, we do, when they have events, they look at where they need to stage supplies, where they can put queues, where they can park people. And, having an overhead view of all the grounds involved is really a huge help. Now, these are from angles to tell a story, and it's kind of more creative film magic on my part. But having the thing empty and seeing where it's supposed to go versus day of the event and it's packed, and where are 6,000 cars going to go? Those sorts of things need to be dealt with and as quickly as possible. And if you are here in the foreground at the food distribution event and there's maybe two people trying to direct traffic, sometimes that gets very challenging if it backs up in a way that you don't anticipate. Let's see. Controlled burn. I don't think we need to look at a controlled burn. Let's skip. This is more interesting. So remember like 2 slides ago when I said I don't represent law enforcement?
Yes.
Talking to you, Greg. Do you remember that? Greg remembers. Good job, Greg.
I remember.
Nice. So that sort of changed, and we met the criteria for drone use one day. I got a call at 7 in the morning that I needed to come out and respond to a scene. And I think I have a video clip. So on the left is me. This is like 2 weeks before everything shut down before COVID. I'm the only person wearing a mask. But we'd been shot at. We had responded to a house fire. We were told by the sheriff's deputies on the scene that somebody had been shot nearby, but they didn't think it was anything big. So we show up, we run hose all over the neighborhood, and then in a few minutes' time, the usual snap, crackle, and pop of the house being on fire, we realized that no, it was a gentleman that was still inside and still armed and was shooting at our fire equipment. So this happened last year, and you can see through the thermal that we've still got some areas that are going. I am kind of out of frame to the right. The gentleman in the green, they are very heavily armed. And they're going to sort of check on what I've already discovered. So if you can see at the middle of the screen, kind of towards the bottom, that's a leg. And the gentleman is in there and no longer a threat, we'll say. But using the drone, and this is all, at this point, I think this is still all just Mavic. It's real little, it's not real obtrusive. I can get down and see what I need to see. I just did a sweep just to make sure that there's not anybody hiding down at the bottom of the stairwell on the first floor, because the first floor remained largely intact. I had representatives from the sheriff's office with me, and I had our fire department personnel with me. So it was a very closed group of folks that needed access to this at the time.
Andrew, how big of a factor does cost play into platform selection as it pertains to your program for your use cases?
Well, government funding is mysterious. Some days the money just doesn't stop, and some years you just don't know if there's any money ever. So I got hired on in 2019. So my funding for my position opened up, which was nice. We also opened our fire training center, which you see as my background. We have a new fire chief that year. And that year, we bought all 3 drones. So I think the outlay was, let's see, the Matrice would have been about 20,000. Each of the Mavics would have been 3,800 or so. So, you know, almost $30,000, I think, outlay up front. And then since then, not so much. So, you know, if the question is, before sending a robotic semi-autonomous device into some place dangerous, is that a consideration? Is that sort of the question?
Man, that could be part of it. Really, what I'm curious about is your platform selection is based off of rotary wing, multi-rotor platforms. But if you had something with a longer endurance that was in a fixed wing that could loiter overhead for a longer extended period of time, the cost might go up. Would that be something that would be justifiable for the use case, or do you get a lot of value out of having something that can be on station for maybe 30 minutes at a time before having to land, change the battery, put it back up in the air?
I'm totally looking at something like an Autel Dragonfish. I think that's like $150,000 price tag, but I think I can get enough people to go in on that, because that would enable me to A, stay in the air for almost 2 hours, as their marketing says, or B, just cover more ground. So I can, you know, there's projects where people very casually ask if I can map a property that's 500 acres. that's a lot for a quadcopter to accomplish. I think I'm good here. I can stop sharing the screen if you like.
So in the operational scenario you talked about, how does your airspace management come into play? Do you have a COA? Do you have a special agreement with the FAA? Do they just say, nope, we trust you? How does that work?
So Osceola County itself is fairly uncomplicated. Even Disney's Magic Dome of secrecy is mostly out of county. The Class B in Orlando International largely doesn't affect me except for sort of the very northern tip of the place. There's a Class D in Kissimmee Gateway Airport, and the gentleman with air traffic control there is from St. Cloud, Florida. He likes to be called Huck, and he actually just prefers that I call him. Just this year, Lance got enabled, so you can just go on an app and just type in your grid. I want to fly right here. I promise to fly below 400 feet, and you can get nearly instantaneous approval. I still like to just call him anyway because that's kind of the way he does things. So I'm Part 107. I was due for to re-up the Part 107 this October. I just did the recurrent training. The recurrent training is amazing and is kind of what I thought that the initial should have been. I guess everybody on here has a Part 107 at this point, or no?
No, it's a mix of folks.
Okay. Some folks are flying under COA or public aircraft operation or something like that. Anyway, I went into the proctored exam the first time with a mind full of, here's how you read the sectional chart, here's what the markings on the runway at the airport mean, and all this other exciting stuff. And the test was minimally about exactly, flying a UAS. If you know what height, how fast, and kind of the weights involved, like that, those were like the 4 or 5 questions out of the 60 questions that really actually dealt with piloting the craft. And the recurrent was much more involved in piloting the craft. The thing that I would advise you, though, is you don't really think about it at the time, but the FAA description of the sort of, I think there's 5 of the behaviors that can be dangerous for a UAS operation. I almost can guarantee that at some point, somebody making the decision about whether or not you fly a mission is going to have one of those properties, and they're going to ask you to do something, and you're going to have to be the guy that says no. So, if you're PIC, be ready to say no too. I mean, it might be an awesome mission, it might be really valuable, but at least in my line of work, I'm not going to put somebody else in danger or lose equipment or be real good friends with the FAA for a long time over the fact that somebody needs to get it done now or didn't plan ahead or whatever. So that's what I got. Any questions?
Could you perhaps give some of the examples of those characteristics that you just mentioned?
Sure. Yeah. So
I'm not a Part 107 guy, so I'm not sure.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So
I appreciate your insight. Thank you.
There's people that think that nothing bad is going to happen. There's people that think, oh, just hurry up and do it. You'll get it done. There's people that are just like, and it tends to be the people that own the equipment, that buy the equipment. And so I'm not naming names here, but they think that by doing flying and operating, there's some sort of a flex on how important they are, how big they are. So you just have to be ready to call it and be honest. I missed 2 of them there, so don't disqualify me from my Part 1.
Oh no, you're fine. You're fine. I was just curious. I didn't have any insight on.
Okay, Steve, I'm going to drop it in the chat for you real quick.
You found it. You got the FAA.
Yeah, the FAC chapter 2.
Awesome. Yeah, so there they call out. This is part of the ADM, aeronautical decision making. There's a hazard and risk, and there's a chart, 5 hazardous attitudes. Anti-authority, don't tell me. Impulsivity, do it quickly. Invulnerability will never happen to me. Macho or machismo, I can do it. And then resignation. Well, what's the use? Why not do this? I might as well. Those are 5 different mental attitudes that can lead to serious problems in the aviation, and not just the aviation environment, but given the FAA, their purview is aviation. That's why they've highlighted it. So.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, Dustin. Well,
I've got a question.
Oh, perfect.
So you're the only pilot for the Osceola County, correct?
So there is a movement to get more pilots. There are 2 more in different departments. So for Osceola Fire Rescue and for the emergency management, yes. Osceola County government as a whole was looking up to a year ago into having some sort of program for building inspections. If somebody had a roof replacement or something like that, the inspection would be done by drone, and they would hire either part-time or just somebody whose sole job was to go to a location, do like a 4-point, take some photos and send those into home. And then a licensed building inspector would say yes or no. So that was an item that was going to expand. In my department, they're looking to get more than just me available, because as a single resource, sometimes it's difficult. The county covers 1,500 plus square miles, and not all of it is urban with roads. So sometimes it's hard to get me to a location at a particular time where it's useful to everybody. So I realize that I'm not going to be the rock star here forever. Also, and this is Brent, this is kind of the downer. Nobody cares that I take pretty pictures. Nobody. I'm kind of in this at the tail end where everybody now just wants the drone in the air and they want to have like just sort of a Overwatch. So if the fire department can put what I do in a little box that is tethered on the front of the fire engines and just kind of send it up in the air and have a look around, that's all they need. Yeah. So, try to razzle dazzle them with some extra skills if you have them, but in the end, you may be replaced with software. So,
and how do they decide? How do they decide that for a certain scenario that they want you there? Because obviously they can't call you for every fire. So what causes them to say that we need you for this specific one?
I actually want them to call me for every fire. So there's certain things. Honestly, I love to work. I deliberately chose when I took this job to not be an hourly employee. I do not enjoy particularly being leashed to a desk, which is kind of my existence prior to this. So bring me out in the field, call me. I'm available. My phone never stops ringing, whether it's, from staff or from news media calling to get updates about whatever fender bender on I-4. So the protocols on how to call me out is not really well defined yet. That's honestly, it's got to be a part of how I think our command situation is established. So somebody will show up and it's more than an engine and a rescue can figure out, or it's an incident with more than one alarm going. And so they'll call me out to a large scene or a sustained scene. And if they have that need, I get called probably more often than not to come out to find out how a truck or a pumper or whatever can get back to a rural property, because Google Maps doesn't always have all the answers. Osceola County is like the second fastest growing county in all of the nation. And so they'll show up and the caller is on the phone and she can see flames in her backyard. Well, her whole subdivision isn't on the map yet, so we have to figure out where that is.
I see.
I mean, it's either that kind of critical information or, towards the tail end of this situation, they want to make sure that they've done a good job of fully extinguishing everything. So they'll call me in sort of cleanup duty.
Well, thank you.
In emergency management, they'll call. They're probably the best at being prepared to know that they want something. So I usually have a really good heads up with that. They'll, they're investigating a site to see if it's a good potential fit for, some operation that they want to do in 2 weeks. So that's beautiful. Hey, go out and look at this and just take some photos for us.
Outstanding. Do we have any more questions?
I got a question for Andrew. I know you've put out, you set examples on a lot of fire kind of overwatch and thermal abilities and everything. I just wanted to ask you, has there ever been any successful mission, or any mission rather, that maybe personnel recovery or a flood where you had to look for somebody in the water that was missing or something of that nature? Do you ever get called for anything like that?
So, and I only have 2 years of experience to draw on here. The only time that I've ever had a request to either find a body or recover a person. The one you saw, it was the home shooting incident. I was able to find that person using thermal. He was still cooking. He was hot. And then the other, we were actually looking for a gentleman who was well, but he was, we'll say, on the heavy side. He was working some surveying in the cypress swamp and wasn't able to make it out on his own. It was a very rough area. And so I was called out, I think at like 3 p.m, and they said, hey, your drone has thermal imaging. Can you help find this guy? And I couldn't. It just, you need some parameters to be able to use the technology effectively. And then in the middle of the day, you're going to see the heat on the treetops more than you're going to see a person that's obstructed by a bunch of trees. So it's not a cure-all for everything. Ideally, you'd like to have, like, the little kid that wandered away from the picnic in a grassy field at like 7:30 at night. I'll find that person every time. But it has its uses, and I think kind of realizing the limitations of it is generally an asset that you want to have. So, working through what the equipment is, knowing how the software functions and all of that, I think really has to be a part of your program before you even take it off the ground. Like, practice, know how to get to the settings. If you're asked to do that, know how you set up your isotherm identification, know how to set your temperature parameters, and work with what you got. But kind of answers the question.
No, it does. Thank you.
Okay. But no major hero moments, sadly. I'll go out, I will give the incident command person exactly what they want to know fairly quickly, and they go off and make their operations call. As they do, they kind of get lizard brain. You put something in front of them, and then they solve it, and then they go and do that. And it's not a lot of check it again. So then what I do is I kind of get bored and I wander off and I make a pretty thing that I can post to Facebook, if we're being honest. 20 minutes on a flight battery doesn't seem like a whole lot of time, but if you know exactly what your mission is before you get up in the air, you can accomplish it and then have extra time. And
So Andrew, next week, are you going to provide footage of the Daytona Bike Week?
Our guest next week is going to be Dr. Greg Kretzinger. So
I'm kidding. I know. I was hoping that you're so close to Daytona that there might have been some coverage there.
Well, the other exciting thing that Florida legislature did is it said that, even if you're not law enforcement, you have to be very careful about what private property you record. Yeah. So that makes it difficult. So part of, as I unfolded the plans to have a drone program here, that was part of my consideration is, how do you establish who is going to be piloting this? What is the process of dealing with risk management, insurance, and all of that exciting stuff? How do you work through the legalities of operating it? So, we have code enforcement as a department of the county. It's not even quasi. It is. They're sworn officers, and that technically is law enforcement. So how awesome would it be to just sort of do a flight over a subdivision and cite everybody with code enforcement issues in their backyard?
Can't do it now. They just
Can't
made
do
that
it
illegal.
now. So we developed forms through our county attorney's office that property owners can basically approve to have a drone use over their property. So that makes it easy for, like, if we plan on purchasing property for like a road and bridge project or something like that, if there's a parcel of land, we're not really sure how it would fit in, we can do an overflight that way. And, you know, who knows, maybe in the future of code enforcement, they'll have, you know, as you get your initial citation, you fill out this form, and it, you know, by having us check up on it with a drone, it makes it a little less of a penalty. Who knows? I don't know, but it's always in flux. We pay people on county payroll to sort of keep tabs on what the government is doing and in Tallahassee at the state level, and keep us posted on, you know, what sorts of developments are coming down the pike. I understand that there's a little bit of a loosening on how drones can be used by emergency management in Florida in the future, and I'm all for that. Honestly, as a matter of opinion, I'd just say that, you know, a lot of the ways that they treat just this particular technology seems kind of unfair. But, you know, be looking for one of those advocacy groups to start something in the courts maybe and try to fix it. I don't know, Brent, you got any insight on that?
Nothing I'll commit to Zoom.
Fair. That's fair. Okay.
But I do think you're right. I think we're gonna have to see this go to the courts to be argued. Same thing with you know, preemption, and that's kind of I think that's a big problem right now that, you know, we're driving towards, where, you know, when we saw the establishment of you know, the FAA, the initial civil authority, we had the makings of a patchwork quilt, and through their nature, they helped to smooth that out and bring things under the purview of the federal level. For some reason, with UAS technology, we've moved away from that, and we now have states and local government starting to make their own rules in excess or sometimes in conflict with what the FAA has out there. So we're going to see some, I think, interesting things happen in the next few years to sort some of that out. But you know, regarding we talked about how here in the state of Florida we have some kind of unique provisions, and now, you know, we have this new bill, CS HB 1049, which now is calling out any Florida public or government agency by 2023, they're going to need to utilize technology that's on a Department of Managerial Services list. So all the drone manufacturers that they approve of. And the interesting thing will be what gets fed into there. I do know they're asking all the agencies right now that if you do use this, we want a comprehensive plan from you that'll discontinue your use by July 1st, 2022. I think that's where they're going to start getting a lot of protests. Because for example, you know, DJI is a very intuitive, simple system. It creates an ecosystem once you've selected one user or one OEM like that. Just in your case, how many approximately, you know, how much budget is tied up in that OEM?
So that's tens of thousands of dollars. Just again, that's just me. That's just me and the devices that I pilot. Like I said, there's, you know, the building department is in. I think they're just with the Mavic 2 Zoom or something like that. You know, but even in that, that's all taxpayer dollar. Like, there's going to be outrage if we had to throw that in a trash can just because they don't like that there potentially could be data going off the mainland.
And that's that's where I think we have to take a look at it and see, how do we mitigate this? How do we address it? How do we make sure that it does have that data security, but that we don't essentially have misallocation of prior funds spent, because that is a lot of time and training also spent with platform familiarization. So it's an interesting challenge, one that just kind of dropped in everybody's lap just a couple days ago. So as you start to approach this challenge, if next year you'd like to help us with an academic exercise, I think this class would be an excellent opportunity for me to maybe pose to the students. Here's a hypothetical scenario. So instead of the project that you guys are doing right now with your unmanned system research project, imagine we had a realistic scenario where the impact, the influence could be there to help somebody like Andrew make a decision from multiple points of perspective. Kind of crowdsource the problem and see, hey, is there anything that maybe hasn't been thought of to address this? So if you want to run that or if you want to kick that off, let me know. I'll be happy to put that in the hopper. So.
Well, I think probably for me, the more useful part would be if we could have a class exercise where the entire class gets together and convinces my supervisors that they need to reinvest in more drone stuff. All for that.
Ooh, a win-win. That'd be awesome.
Well, once again, Andrew, I really appreciate your time, coming to speak to us. This is something that I think it's been extremely insightful and enlightening for the class. I know we have folks that couldn't make it, but we're gonna make this recording available to them so that they can kind of learn from this. And I really hope you all got something out of it, and that you'll also be able to make it next week when we bring our next guest in. But to me, this is the first time I've ever done this, and I now know I'm going to make this a recurrent process. This is phenomenal. I get to further interact with you guys. I'm not just a picture on a page sending you criticism and critiques and APA guidance that you're probably totally sick of. I'm able to actually introduce technical content from a real world expert that's using this, that can help you make informed decisions in your research process. So
that'd be great. And thank you again, Andrew. That was awesome.
You're very welcome. And Professor, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. T, for setting us up. This is well done. Well done, sir.
Thrilled to help. All right, everybody, well, have a great night, and I'm going to stop the recording. So thank you all for joining us. If you, all the UNSY 603 students, if on 7.2, you can just make a note that you attended the Tuesday night guest lecture, and that way I'll make sure you get the credit in there, and you should be good to go. And it'll apply peer pressure. So next time.
Yeah, perfect.
Thanks, Dr.
Great
T.
idea.
Thanks,
Thank you, everybody. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.